And that's the new one that with this one, Jamar cut.
You can't block my shortcut. Take it
The
down.
battle
It's
for
right.
our
It's
backyard.
my land now.
How
Back
I
off,
outsmarted
Diane.
the HOA tyrant. It was a sunny Saturday morning in our quiet suburban neighborhood of Willow Creek, Virginia, when my world turned upside down. I was driving home from a quick run to the hardware store, the hum of my old pickup truck a familiar comfort, when I heard Ida Chainsaw's angry scream tearing through the air. My heart sank as I rounded the corner onto Maple Drive and saw cedar splinters flying across my lawn. There, in broad daylight, was a hired thug in an orange vest, chainsaw in hand, ripping through the wooden fence my wife, Linda, and I had spent weeks building. Standing nearby, smirking like she owned the world, was Diane, the HOA president who thought she was the queen of our cul-de-sac. Her excuse? The neighborhood needed a shortcut to the lake behind our property. By the time I parked, my blood was boiling, but I wasn't about to lose control. I had learned long ago that rage doesn't win, war strategy does. And so began the fight of my life, a battle not just for my fence but for my family's peace, fought with paperwork, patience, and a plan so devious it would bring Diane's reign of terror crashing down. Let me take you back to the beginning. Linda and I moved to Willow Creek 5 years ago, chasing the American dream, a modest house with a yard where we could sip coffee on the porch and listen to crickets instead of city horns. At 52, I'd seen enough of life's rough edges to know what I wanted, a place to call our own, free from drama. Willow Creek's brochure promised just that: smiling families, a sparkling lake, and a tight-knit community. What it didn't mention was Diane, the HOA president who ruled like a dictator in yoga pants. From day one, she made it clear she was in charge. Our first violation notice came a week after we moved in. Our welcome mat was navy blue, not the approved beige or gray. A $25 fine followed. I laughed it off, Linda worried. Maybe we should just comply, she said, her brow furrowed. I tossed the notice in the trash, but the next day, another arrived. We bought a beige mat. That was our first taste of Diane's obsession with control. Our neighbor, George, a retired mechanic with a penchant for loud Hawaiian shirts and an army of garden gnomes, filled us in on Diane's history. Over a beer in his garage, he spun tales of her tyranny. The time she tried to ban porch package deliveries for being unsightly, nearly causing a neighborhood revolt. The mailbox mandate, where she forced everyone to repaint their mailboxes with her cousin's overpriced paint. George called her Empress Diane, scourge of swing sets, and his stories painted a picture of a woman who thrived on power. Her husband had left her years ago, taking half her wealth, and the HOA became her kingdom, a way to control everyone else's life since she couldn't control her own. Linda wanted to keep the peace, but I knew better. Bullies like Diane don't stop when you comply, they double down. The fence incident was the breaking point. That fence wasn't just wood, it was our sweat, our weekends, our pride. Linda had picked out every board, and I'd driven every nail. When I saw it in splinters, my vision blurred with rage. Diane stood on the sidewalk, holding a coffee mug and a flimsy flyer with the HOA logo, claiming the beautification committee needed a lake shortcut. It's for the community, she said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. Linda ran out, tears in her eyes, and I gave her a nod that said, "I've got this." I turned to Diane, my voice low and steady. "You have 3 seconds to explain why you're destroying my property." She laughed, waving her flyer like a royal decree. "The bylaws give me authority," she said. "This is an official access corridor now." I looked at the hired hand, who avoided my gaze, and then at the wreckage of my fence. I didn't shout. I didn't fight. I smiled a cold, calculated smile that made her smirk falter. "A shortcut, huh?" I said. "We'll see about that." That night, I retreated to my home office, a cramped room filled with books and an old desktop. Linda hovered in the doorway, worried. "What are you going to do, Tom?" she asked. I pulled up the county assessor's website and said, "I'm going to read the fine print." Diane thought she was fighting with a chainsaw. I was about to show her my weapon was a keyboard and I was a master at wielding it. My past as a logistics analyst had taught me how to dig through data, find the hidden truth in a sea of numbers. I wasn't looking for dirt on Diane, not yet. I wanted to know about the land she'd trespassed on. The county plat map showed our lot, Diane's lot, and the public lake path. Then I saw it. A thin strip of land between my backyard and the path, labeled Parcel 12A. It wasn't mine, but it wasn't the HOA's either. It belonged to a defunct developer, and the taxes hadn't been paid in 3 years. My pulse quickened. Unpaid taxes meant the county could auction the land to recoup the debt. Parcel 12A was an orphan parcel, a forgotten sliver nobody wanted. Nobody except me. I cross-checked the tax records and found the auction was 2 weeks away, with an opening bid of $120. Linda walked in with tea, saw my grin, and frowned. "You're plotting something," she said. I showed her the screen. "Diane trespassed on land she doesn't own," I explained. "I'm going to buy it." Her eyes widened. "That's poking the bear, Tom." I squeezed her hand. "The bear already ate our picnic basket, honey. I'm building a cage." For 2 weeks, I lived a double life. By day, I was the quiet neighbor who waved politely as Diane smirked from her porch, thinking she'd won. By night, I checked the auction site, ensuring no rival bids appeared. Linda was a nervous wreck, staring at the gap in our fence. "I just want this over," she'd say. "Soon," I promised. On auction day, I sat at my desk, refreshing the page. My bid of $120 was the only one. At 5 p.m., the screen flashed. "Winning bidder, T892C. That was me. I paid with my credit card, downloaded the temporary deed, and hugged Linda. "We own the shortcut," I whispered. Her smile was cautious but hopeful. "Now what?" she asked. I grinned. "Now we build a wall." That night, I called a 24-hour fencing company. I needed a 6-foot iron fence installed on the exact property line before sunrise. It was a rush job, costing a small fortune, but worth every penny. At 2 a.m., a crew arrived, working silently with flashlights. By dawn, a black iron wall stood where our wooden fence had been, blocking Diane's precious shortcut. I sat on my porch with coffee, waiting. At 7:30 a.m., Diane emerged in her yoga gear, coffee mug in hand. She took 3 steps, saw the fence, and dropped her mug. It shattered on her driveway. She grabbed the bars, shrieking, "What is this?" I sipped my coffee. "Morning, Diane. Like the new fence? It's on my property. Bought it at auction. Taxes were overdue." Her face turned crimson as she realized I'd outplayed her. "This is an access corridor," she spat. "Not anymore," I said. "It's private property now. I'd be careful about trespassing." Diane didn't take it lying down. She launched a petty war. Fake utility permits, baseless lawsuits claiming a historic right-of-way. I called her bluff every time, verifying permits with the city and getting lawsuits dismissed. Each move added to my file on HOA growing arsenal of evidence. Linda was fraying under the stress, jumping at every new letter. "When will it end?" she asked one night. "When she learns she can't win," I said, holding her close. But Diane's next move was her biggest mistake yet. It started with a frantic call from Linda during a work meeting. "Tom, come home now," she cried. "Diane's here with a backhoe. They're saying there's a gas leak, and they're going to tear down the fence." I sped home, rage and fear warring in my chest. A yellow backhoe loomed on the street, 2 workers unloading tools. Diane stood pointing at my fence, holding a city work order. "Public safety issue, Tom," she said smugly. "Gas line rupture under your fence." I ignored her and demanded the work order from the crew leader, a gruff man named Joe. It looked official city letterhead, signatures, but something felt wrong. Joe didn't move like it was an emergency. I asked for his supervisor's number. Diane snapped, "You can't interfere with city workers." "That's a felony." I shot back, "So is forgery." On speakerphone, I called the city. "Dave, I've got a crew at 124 Maple Drive for a gas line repair, work order 82C. Can you confirm?" Dave's reply was gold. "No work orders on that street." 82C was a sewer job across town, completed yesterday. Joe's face darkened. He'd been played. "You forged this," he roared at Diane. "You dragged my crew out here for nothing?" He ordered his team to pack up, promising a report on her false emergency claim. As they left, Joe pulled me aside. "She's made enemies at the city," he said quietly. "Bullies clerks, pulls strings. My buddy in permits keeps a file on her shady favors, fake emergencies. You seem like the guy who'd know what to do with it." He handed me a manila folder, heavy with secrets. "You didn't get this from me." I stood in my driveway, clutching the folder, knowing the battle for the fence was over. "But this?" This was the key to dismantling Diane's entire empire. That night, I waited until Linda was asleep. In my office, I opened the folder. It was a bombshell. Invoices for inflated HOA contracts, notes linking them to Diane's relatives. Landscaping billed for 20 trees, only 10 planted. A $50,000 paving job costing half that, awarded to her brother-in-law. She'd used HOA funds for personal home repairs, disguised as community expenses. Diane wasn't just a bully, she was a thief, embezzling from every neighbor. I considered calling the police, but hesitated. What if they botched it? What if she had connections? I needed a guarantee she'd never hurt us again. George's voice echoed from a recent call. Check everywhere, even her own garage. It sparked a wild idea. Diane lived by property lines. What if her own wasn't secure? I dove back into the county records, focusing on Diane's lot, 114 Maple Drive. Her pride and joy was a massive 3-car garage, built last year and flaunted in the HOA newsletter. Satellite images showed it crowding the wooded lot behind her house. I spent a day in the county's basement records room, poring over old surveys. On a 1972 map, I found it. Parcel 14B, a 15-foot wide strip of abandoned drainage easement, owned by the same defunct developer. Taxes unpaid, auction in 3 days. And a third of Diane's garage sat on it. She'd built her castle on someone else's land. I bid $85 on parcel 14B from a library computer, keeping it secret. Auction day was torture, refreshing my phone in a grocery store parking lot. At 5:01 p.m., I won. I owned the ground under her garage. I hired a lawyer, Richard, who grinned at my evidence. This is beautiful, he said. We don't negotiate. We dictate. He drafted a notice. Diane had 30 days to pay exorbitant rent or demolish her garage. It was delivered by a process server. Diane's reaction was electric. She tore open the envelope, her body shaking with rage as she glared at my house. For 2 days, silence. Then her lawyer visited, leaving in a hurry. He'd seen my deeds and surveys and dropped her case. That evening, an anonymous email arrived from Ellen's husband, a former HOA board member who'd resigned. Check the reserve fund, he wrote, attaching the real HOA budget. It was a disaster. The reserve fund, meant for community repairs, had $412 left. Diane had drained it to cover her schemes. She was broke, her lavish lifestyle a house of cards. My notice about her garage was the final blow. She couldn't pay rent, demolish, or fight in court. Her allies fled, her house faced foreclosure, and her empire crumbled. Then came her final act. At 2 a.m., glass shattered outside. I grabbed a flashlight and saw Diane, dressed in black, spray painting slurs on my fence. I recorded it on my security cameras, her pathetic last stand. Instead of calling the police, I used the HOA bylaws to call a special meeting. Gathering signatures from furious neighbors shown the real budget. At the meeting, I presented the evidence, fake contracts, embezzlement, and the video of Diane's vandalism. The room erupted. Her remaining board members abandoned her. Police, waiting outside, escorted her out as she stood, defeated, her lies exposed. 3 months later, Willow Creek was transformed. A new HOA president, Susan, focused on practical matters like holiday decorations. George led the beautification committee, approving colorful welcome mats and declaring gnomes protected. Diane's house was foreclosed, sold to a young family who painted the door bright red. She faced felony charges and faded into infamy. The HOA's insurance covered my original fence and legal fees. I sold Parcel 14B to the new owners at a fair price. Parcel 12A became a community garden with benches and marigolds, a symbol of peace reclaimed. Standing in that garden with Linda, I felt the weight lift. What now? She asked. I smiled. We live. The war was over, and we'd won not just for us, but for everyone Diane had bullied. Her downfall was a lesson. Bullies thrive until someone fights back with brains, not fists. What do you think? Was I too harsh, or did Diane deserve every bit of it? Have you faced a bully like her, in an HOA or elsewhere? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your take on justice, bullying, and standing up for what's right. Let's get this conversation going.